Okay, so I'm just wanting to show what all I got in my beef stew here. That's what I'm making. I'm fixing to make some beef stew. I got, of course, one onion that I'm gonna cut up, and I'll show you how to do that. 6, 7, 8 potatoes. These are the bigger ones out of the bag. I get the biggest ones there. I may or may not use a couple of beef bouillon cubes. That's up to you. Also, you can add 2 cans of beef broth. This time I'm not. I always add beef broth when I'm doing deer stew, but I'm showing the old-fashioned way to do beef stew. Okay, so tonight we're making beef stew, not deer stew. But if you can add this. If you're going to add these two, I would not add more than 2 of these little cubes here. 2 of these usually they say something like a cup of water for one of these. So if you got 4 cups, you'd be 4 of these. But because you're making like a broth with the meat and some flour, I'll show you that, then you don't necessarily need to add more than 2. I'm using flour. On the lemon, I'm going to put, I'd say, like a tablespoon of lemon, and Worcestershire sauce, a tablespoon of that. I'm not good on measuring on salt and pepper. I'll do my best. I'd say on pepper about 3/4 of a spoon of pepper, and on let's see, salt. I don't know, about about 1 teaspoon of salt. So, or maybe probably 1.25 teaspoons of pepper. Okay, teaspoon of salt. Bay leaves. Okay, bay leaves here. You want to take 2 of these out. Just you pop the top off here. Take 2 of them out. Okay, and this is important. You're going to cook these in there, and these are really strong. 2 is very strong. You could use 3. You do not want to use 4. Okay, so bay leaves you will find are very strong, and when you're done cooking, you don't eat these. You take them out, fish them out, and throw them in the trash. You just cook with them. And so anyhow, and I'm going to take I'll show you how, but I'm going to take the meat, put it in the flour with some salt and pepper, mix it up, put it under a skillet, and make like a broth while I'm cooking the water down with some onion and the Worcestershire lemon, the bay leaf, and a little bit of salt. And I'm going to add some more salt and pepper at the end. But I mean, that's about all the ingredients I use for beef stew, other than 1 pound of beef, and it's in the fridge. I'm fixing to grab it out. You can use 2 pounds. Most recipes call for 2 pounds. I've got a really large stock pot, and so anyhow, you can use 2 pounds of meat. I'm going to use 1 tonight. I'm going to make an old-fashioned style beef stew tonight. So I'm not going to use the beef broth tonight. I'll use a couple of these bouillon cubes and the potatoes and carrots. I'm going to get some carrots and just so you know, pack of carrots like these here, the small ones. I'm going to go ahead and cut them up. You don't have to, but I'm going to cut them up. But you want to put these in, about halfway through. But you want to wait on the potatoes. I'll tell you that again later probably. But you got to wait on the potatoes until you're about 30 minutes to 45 minutes from being done with the whole recipe, which is about 1.5 hours to 2 hours cooking time. Simply because the potatoes, you don't want them to get too mushy and fall apart to nothing. So, I guess that shows all the ingredients, and now I'll just put everything together, start cutting up some potatoes and stuff, and get it ready to cook. Okay, so what I have here is I'm making beef stew. I've got everything set up here. Basically, we're talking so that if anybody doesn't speak English for a different country here, we're talking flour. Okay, I put basically 1/3 of a cup of flour in a pan here. I've got meat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix it with a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. So 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I usually just use a shaker, but I'm going to actually show measurements in this. Okay, about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Okay, teaspoon of salt. Okay, and let's see here. I'm putting a pound of meat. You can use 2 pounds of meat or a pound of meat. And in the meantime, what we've got is we're going to melt some butter. You can use, so they used to, a long time ago, they used shortening and stuff, but we're talking about 4 tablespoons, which on a stick of butter is half. What I'm going to do is add a little more than half. I'm just going to cut it right here, just like that. And then I'm going to use some of this butter, maybe all of it, maybe half of it, I'm going to see, in the stew whenever I get it going. Now, I'm going to melt that down. In that pot with a lid on it. I've already got this pot oiled down. I put a little bit of vegetable oil in the iron skillet after I cleaned it and wiped it out with a paper towel. Got it really hot, wiped it down real good, and now I'm melting the butter down in it. I'm going to use this lid when I'm cooking the meat. I'm going to make sure this meat gets cooked up. You can use, you know, I want to keep some flour on it. You can use your hands or you can use a spoon. I do it either way. I'm mixing the meat up with the flour here. But anyways, I'm just trying to use a spoon to make sure it's all broke up. It was already thawed. And I'm hoping I'll wind up with some beef stew when I'm done. Salt, pepper, flour. And I do it this way. You can take meat and put it in a pot and try to cook it, but the way I see it is, especially if you're adding vegetables, I don't want to take any chance that the meat's not fully cooked. And this way I don't have to worry at all. If you brown the meat, you know it's going to be cooked. So once I get them separated and mix them up while that butter's melting. And I'm going to actually add a little more flour. That's why I got this other flour in this cup to the stew, because I like it a little bit thicker. But in the meantime, it doesn't hurt to add a little bit more on top like this. So put this on a little bit lower now that it's melting. I'm fixing to throw the meat in. They say to put 5 or 6 pieces at a time on some of the recipes I've seen. They say whatever. I fill up the iron skillet so that I can flip the meat and it's got room to turn. That's about done. By no means am I claiming to be an expert on this. I'm just a guy making some beef stew, that's all. Now maybe if we get this whole pan, the whole 1 pound pack in here. I'm thinking I will. I usually make 2 pounds. on the last time I made it was deer meat, and I like deer meat better, to be honest with you. Turn it up a little bit. And to buy me some time, I'm going to go ahead and throw some water in here. Just a little bit. Alright. That's working. I'm done with this. Okay. What I'm using in all this is onion, I'm using about 5 or 6 potatoes, onion, and 4 cups of boiling water. That butter I put in, flour, salt, pepper, the meat, a tablespoon of lemon juice, a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, a teaspoon of sugar, and 2 bay leaves, and a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. So here's the allspice that I use is seasoned salt. But on the bay leaves, I put 2 bay leaves in the stew pot, my very large stew pot over here, and can't see it, but here it is. And then you fish them out when you're done, the bay leaves. So I believe it's just about time for me to turn this a little bit so it don't stick and be cooked too much on one side. Alright, you do want it brown. I don't always cook meat, but cook beef anyhow. I usually use deer meat, but either way I'm going to put a lid on it no matter what. It cuts down on the cooking time and makes sure it's thoroughly cooked, like a Dutch oven. I'll be adding some water to that. Okay, so what I got now is I want to show how I cut up the onions. Basically cut one end off of it, cut the other end off of it. This is how I skin one. Now if you want to make onion rings, you won't be real easy when you make that cut across the side. Okay, this is just prep work that I've already done. A good bit of prep work, but I thought I'd show this anyhow. I'm going to show basically how to cut up the onion so you don't wind up with 2 long pieces in your stew and not 2 small pieces. So, cut slices. I like that. These are a lower 1/4 inch round. And then you're going to take the slices, set them down, and this is my little trick. You're just going to cut across into them, like north, south, east, west. That's fine for stew. This one can go a little bit there. Because that's one of the things I'm going to cook the whole time in the stew, I can go ahead and throw those in the pot. Get rid of the peelings here. What we're going to do is I've got 4 cups of water I'm going to use. So to start out with, in your pot, I use a coffee cup just because it's got a bigger handle. Make them all the way full. I just got a big stainless steel pot. You don't need one this big. Now, I'll go ahead and throw them in. I'll go ahead and turn that on. Ain't gonna hurt nothing. That's just to start with that much water. There's gonna be a lot more water in there when I'm done. Now, check this meat. Starting to get a bit brown. Add some more water to it. Okay. Now, on the potatoes. I use a potato peeler that is just a long, wide blade here. This type of potato peeler here. And I'm just going to show how I do it. I've got a bunch of them already made up that my wife was nice enough to cut up for me. She's helping me out because she's so much faster than I am anyways when it comes to cutting up potatoes and carrots. Now, I just wanted to show how I cut these potatoes up. Now, this is the greatest peeler I've ever had. Take a shot of that. I use it every time I'm touching a potato. I use it. Okay, now, basically, I'm going to take this potato and cut it into large pieces, okay, because they're going to boil down, they're going to just about melt on this thing. So what I would do is just start by cutting it this way, send on in, this way. Just by cutting it in half every time, that's pretty much what I do. Those are kind of smaller, but those will get done this size, but I'm going to go ahead and cut them in half again. Now, good. Now these are all of them. I'm going to add them in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes before the stew is done so that they're not overcooked. But because I'm cooking this meat like this right here, it's going to be done a lot sooner than most recipes call for beef stew. They say 1.5 to 2 hours. I may let it go that long because I'm going to add some flour at the end. Okay, now, and here's the carrots. They're already cut up. We'll add them at the end also. Now, the Worcestershire, the lemon, the bay leaves is what's left. Go ahead and take out 2 bay leaves. Two bay leaves. Throw them in here. And now it's a tablespoon of Worcestershire, tablespoon of lemon juice, and that's right into this pot. So, 1 tablespoon lemon juice, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire, now on the bay leaves, like I said before, bay leaves, you put 2 of them in there, you cook the stew, then you fish them back out when you're done. You're not going to eat the bay leaves. They're just for flavor. So, we're done with the bay leaves and all that. And now I've just got some leftover butter, and we're down to sugar. Now the sugar, let's see here. Wash that off. And a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice and a teaspoon of sugar. So, allspice is seasoned salt, you know, but I call it allspice. 1/4 teaspoon. I like that. I don't usually use spoons here, but I'm trying to show how I do it here. And a teaspoonful of sugar. And that winds up level. So, this is over here. Stock cooking. Alright. I'm going to let this cook for a bit and let it steep, I guess you call it, or whatever, just like that, and let it cook. And then I'm going to wind up browning it a little bit before I put it into the pot. I'll come back when all this is, I'll come back when I put this into the pot. I'm going to cut the video off now. And you can actually add a beef bouillon cube to this and make it even more beef tasting if you want, and you can substitute the meat for deer meat. So there you go, and we'll check it in a minute. That'll be beef stew. Alright, so what I've done is I added another cup of water, and I'm just trying to make sure that the meat's completely done by having a lid on it and everything. Now I'm going to let a lot of that water boil down here, and I don't know, I'm going to check this meat and make sure it's done. Take and cut it in half, just poke a piece of it. This is the easiest way to tell so you don't guess. Just cut it in half. It's done. Okay, so I'm going to let this though thicken up a bit, and I did decide, I'm like, you know what, last time I put beef bouillon cubes in it when I made the deer stew, and I'm like, that's what I'm going to do this time. So they're just beef bouillon cubes. This is what I had up in the cabinet from last time. And I'm actually going to use 2. You only need 1, really. And I'm going to put a little more butter in the pot when I do, and probably about half this flour, or maybe all of it. It's going to thicken it up. And put the bouillon cubes in the pot. When I put this in here, I'm putting, it's going to be dried. It's not going to be, you know, quite as watery. I'm going to go ahead and put the meat and the broth that I made with it into this pot. Okay, I got steamed a bit, it's kind of hot. So, and that's my second cube. I'm thinking that's ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and put my carrots in there just a little bit after I do this. This speeds up the cooking time, by the way. You can actually put all of it in the same pot and then add your vegetables later. And you can cook this in with onions and all that stuff, but to make sure the meat's done and to cut down the cooking time, I put it in this iron skillet. And I guess it'd be hard to show unless I move this over here. There we go. Then I'm putting this in here, so it don't splash over here. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and throw some more flour in here. About another quarter cup. Put half of this butter. So we almost used a whole stick of butter. Alright. Now, I'm going to add a few more glasses of water to this to make it, right now it's at this level, right here. You can see about where it's at now. It's to about this level. I'm going to bring it on up to about right here. I'm thinking 4 more glasses of water because I really like the vegetables and all are going to have to cook, and I really like them soft, and I really like a good thick beef stew. I'm going to boil it down. You know, from here it's going to boil down. We're talking about hour and a half left on cook time, maybe 2 hours if you wanted to wait that long. So I'm going to go ahead and add some water. Just going to take a glass. I say the way it looks right now, I'm saying going with 3. And now I'm gonna find a big enough spoon, and I want to make sure that that flour is breaking up good and stirred up good, and the bouillon. See, you really don't need this big of a pot. You can double this recipe though, and it'll be right up to here. 2 pounds of meat. You don't have to add double the spices or anything, and but 2 pounds of meat is going to add, of course, more flour and more everything. And I would say still use just 2 bouillon cubes and some more flour. About another hour. I'm going to boil it like crazy. Keep it on almost as high as it'll go in this gas range. About another hour. I'll check it. Turn it up. So that way. Okay. Let it cook. we'll have beef stew in no time. Alright, so I mentioned that I was going to let it cook for a couple hours, but I forgot to tell you, it's saying about about 30 minutes in or so, at least no later than 30 minutes before you're done cooking. We're going to add carrots. And our cut up potatoes. Alright. So what we've done is I made the meat in an iron skillet, cooked it up, made what you call a roux or a broth, added it to the vegetables, I'm sorry, to the onion anyway, and all the spices. Cooked that down a bit with the flour, and so you're talking about an hour and a half to 2 hours once you get it in this pot. But once you're an hour in, at least an hour in, add the vegetables. You can actually add the vegetables 30 minutes in. The thing is, so they don't completely fall apart, but you want to make them done, you got to at least put them in, say 25 to 30 minutes before you're done cooking. So let that cook a little bit longer. Okay, so I set the timer for about an hour. I've got 30 minutes left here in that hour, and I guess I failed to mention that you're supposed to stir it the whole time. But anyhow, this is what we got so far. It's looking really good, and I wanted to say that you see, you really don't need this big of a pot for as much as I'm making. But anyhow, I use a spatula here to make sure nothing sticks to the bottom. Okay, every once in a while, and I change it up from the vegetable, from the spatula to the vegetables are looking good. I change it up from the spatula to the spoon. You know, depending on how long it's been since I've stirred it. And the reason I put the spoon in here though is I want to show the vegetables, and that is really looking good now. I'm going to leave the lid off of it now for about the last 30 minutes. Let it thicken up. And it's a really deep pot, so I would say right now it's about this high from the bottom. You see how big this pot is huge. It's about, let's say about that high right there from the bottom. Okay, and that's that would be it would have been up here to the brim of most pots. So once you get it boiled down to this point, if you want to, you can change it out to a normal size pot if it's easier to stir or to put in your refrigerator, because a normal size pot is about where it's at now that I've got it you know, boiled down here. So it's looking really good though. Like I said, I'm going to leave the top off, and you got to stir all the time. I didn't mention that, and I did wind up adding some more salt and pepper. So there it is, and we will have beef stew in no time. Okay, so I set the timer for about an hour. I've got 30 minutes left here in that hour, and I guess I failed to mention that you're supposed to stir it the whole time. But anyhow, this is what we got so far. It's looking really good, and I wanted to say that you see, you really don't need this big of a pot for as much as I'm making. But anyhow, I use a spatula here to make sure nothing sticks to the bottom. Okay, every once in a while, and I change it up from the vegetable, from the spatula to the vegetables are looking good. I change it up from the spatula to the spoon. You know, depending on how long it's been since I've stirred it. And the reason I put the spoon in here though is I want to show the vegetables, and that is really looking good now. I'm going to leave the lid off of it now for about the last 30 minutes. Let it thicken up. And it's a really deep pot, so I would say right now it's about this high from the bottom. You see how big this pot is huge. It's about, let's say about that high right there from the bottom. Okay, and that's that would be it would have been up here to the brim of most pots. So once you get it boiled down to this point, if you want to, you can change it out to a normal size pot if it's easier to stir or to put in your refrigerator, because a normal size pot is about where it's at now that I've got it boiled down here. So it's looking really good though. Like I said, I'm gonna leave the top off, and you gotta stir all the time. I didn't mention that, and I did wind up adding some more salt and pepper. So there it is, and we will have beef stew in no time.